Hey everybody, and welcome to my N5 series on the Roland P-6, where I cover a topic in about 5 minutes. DMW writes in and asks if we can use Ableton Live to control a chain of Aira devices. And I've got the P-6 here right now. It is currently connected over USB-C to my computer. We could do audio, but we're just going to do Midi for this to keep things simple. And from there, I've just got the output is just going out so that we can actually do things like play keys and be able to hear kind of what's going on for the keyboard. And currently I can play keys on the S1, but it's not fully hooked up yet. We'll get into that in a second. Anyway, first thing up we want to do, we're going to go to settings, load that up, go into your link, tempo, and MIDI, and you're going to want your P6 MIDI out. You may want this turned off. Basically, we don't want the input. So when we're playing keys here, we may not want that to be going into Ableton. That's going to be up to you depending on how you want to set things up, but it's very easy to create a feedback loop that you might not want. I'm going to leave it on just so I can show you the feedback loop and what happens and how to resolve it if you get it. But if you don't want to deal with the feedback loop, you can just hit track off. There are some settings in the P6, but we kind of need certain things on to be able to address things further down the Aira chain here. And for output ports for Ableton Live, I'm going to leave the track out because we want to send track out from here to the P6 MIDI in. And I'm just going to leave the sync on in case you wanted to have like delays be in sync with your tempo from Ableton Live. So with those settings, we can now close this and start talking about what we need to set up. So I'm going to go MIDI from, I'm going to currently leave it as all ins, and this is where you're going to see the feedback loop. I'm going to leave monitoring auto. We're going to come to MIDI, and we're going to go P6 MIDI in so that we can route MIDI out from Ableton to the P6 MIDI in. And I'm going to set to channel 15. If you're curious what your channels are, MIDI channels are on your P6, just hold Shift, menu, and if you scroll through, you'll see there's things here that are like S clock. That's the clock that you can get for samples. S channel is basically addressing your larger pads here. We've got G channel and we've got A channel, which is your auto channel, which is basically your keyboard. So if we want to play things in chromatically, we can do it one pad at a time, whatever your currently selected pad is. So in this case, I'm just going to use A channel. If you hit enter on any of these, you can see what the value is. It's 15. So I'm going to exit out. And you can see, I've got it in keyboard mode so we can play keys. And I've just set this to 15. Now, if I'm playing on my computer keyboard, we can see all channels is getting something as I play it, but it's not going anywhere. I'm just going to arm the track. And now you can hear that it's sending the MIDI note over, but it sounds pretty terrible. And once I stop it, it's stopped sending the MIDI notes, so we actually hear the piano end. The reason this is happening is that we're basically sending a MIDI note from Ableton over to the Roland P6, and then the P6 is sending that note back to Ableton, which is then accepting it and sending it back. So we get this MIDI loop that we don't want. And a pretty easy way to fix this, I'm just going to say to get MIDI from just the computer keyboard right now. If you have a different keyboard or key bed or anything that you want to use, just set it to that. It'll make it easier. Or go back into your settings and just turn off the P6 for the MIDI input for Ableton Live. But with that, I can now play notes. You might be wondering, again, we're seeing it light up. I just need to turn arm on. And now I can play that. Now, the next step is to have the chain for a Aira device further down. I've got my MIDI out TRS going to MIDI in on the S1. And with that, I can now send notes over. To check the S1 what MIDI channel it's using, I'm just going to hold down Shift, menu, and it's a little ways in, but if you just go scroll over to CH here, that is your MIDI channel that you're going to be wanting to use. And in this case, it's 3. So if now we come and set this channel to 3, we can see I'm sending MIDI notes over from the keyboard, but we can't hear anything. So to fix that isn't really too terribly difficult. I'm just going to take another TRS cable. I'm going to go mix out to mix in, and now we can hear that I can play it. So basically, the steps to do this, if you have even more Aira devices, is you just can continue doing this chain where you go MIDI out to the next device, MIDI in down the chain, and you just go your audio out to the audio in for the devices. So you just kind of keep extending this. It'll work. All the menu options on the Aira devices, you can go in and find out what the MIDI channel is to be able to figure out how you're going to send MIDI notes. And as long as they don't share the exact same MIDI channel, you can address as many MIDI devices as you want down this chain. This even does work with other devices. So I could put like a Dirty Wave M8 or other devices into the chain. It doesn't have to be Aira, but they do need to share the same TRS format, or for like the MIDI. These are all MIDI A devices for TRS. If you end up with a MIDI B, you're going to need something to switch it over or convert it to the native MIDI type A or type B, and then go to DIN, and then use the DIN cables to switch it over. Anyway, DMW, thank you for the question. Everybody else, thanks for stopping by. Keep making music, keep having fun. Remember, if it sounds good, it is good, and peace.